Hey guys, welcome to this video and welcome to our YouTube channel. For those of you who know me and look at me and say, hey Rajat, what the hell, why are you wearing a suit? The very simple reason that, today we'll talk about consulting, and if you're a consultant, I read somewhere that you're supposed to wear a dark suit. That's kind of supposedly in McKinsey's a dress code or so. I don't know how much it's true, but I read about it somewhere. So we'll talk about this. So with that, let's just minimize this video and talk about the big three. So if you're going for an MBA, you've heard about the big three: Bain, McKinsey, and BCG. And I just read an article on MBA.com where they talked about that these big three are planning to increase their MBA hiring by record numbers. In the class of 2021, the number of MBAs would be hired as consultants most likely will be the largest ever. Just to really tell you a bit about it. So first of all, what will we cover in this video? We'll talk about what are these hiring plans. Then we'll talk about which schools, do they hire from, and what are some of the top schools where they hire from. Again, they hire from pretty much all of top 15, top 20, but which schools do they particularly hire from? How many MBAs do we think would be hired for the class of 2021? And essentially just a bit about these firms as to how big these firms are and just where do they stand, how much have they been growing every year. So with that, let's get started with some of these codes. So to really just understand the scope of this hiring, I have the respective directors of hiring for each of these firms. So Brian Rawls from McKinsey says, we've increased our recruiting goals and anticipate in 2021 that we'll hire the largest incoming class. And all of this is courtesy of MBA.com and Business, because Keith Bevins, again, echoes a very similar sentiment. He's from Bain. He says he planned for the campus hiring to be the largest it would be for full-time interns. And Amber Goreval, who's from BCG, and let me actually move my video so you can see her. She says that they're planning to use technology, and the firm is planning its biggest ever hiring year. Again, if you are someone who's graduating, if you are planning to apply, it's good news. I mean, think about it. The economy is hurt back COVID, and the firms that charge $400 or $500 an hour and essentially hire a number of MBAs, probably account for about 20 to 21% of all MBA recruiting from top schools. They've increased their hiring plan. They are planning to hire their biggest class ever. So with that, let's just talk about where do these people hire from. And again, as I said, they pretty much hire from all of top 20 or so. But essentially, if you look at one of our articles, top schools, which you can look at it in the top right hand corner, you'd see from a percentage standpoint, Tuck 42% of its class goes into consulting. Harvard, again, a fairly large chunk. Kellogg, Duke, and Columbia. Each one of these, a fairly significant proportion of their class goes into consulting. Again, pretty much all three go over there. Now, it doesn't mean Tuck sends more MBAs to these firms than Harvard, so you shouldn't just look at this number. Tuck's a much smaller school. Harvard is the largest of these schools, so arguably I think Harvard sends more MBAs to consulting than Tuck does. But I mean, Tuck has had this impeccable record, and if you're planning to go into consulting, any one of these schools would do. But Tuck has a beautiful curriculum that plans you to become a consultant. You do multiple internships during those 2 years, not just the internship that you have between the first and second year. Now, talking about internships, consulting pays really well once you graduate, but consulting also pays really well when you're interning. This is again, some stats, same schools. And again, when you go to the article, these are all links. You can really see the sources over there. Let me make the font a bit bigger over here. Oh, can't make it. But essentially, if you're interning and making $13,500 a month, it's pretty good money over there. So with that, let's talk a bit about the big three. Let's see what is it that the big three do. And so let's talk about the big three, and let me get my notes. We do need our notes. So we call them the big three because they are big, but the biggest of them is McKinsey, and the 2019 revenue was about $10.5 billion. Now, BCG, arguably very similar in revenue, $8.5 billion, and Bain and Company is the smallest of the lot, but still $4.5 billion in revenue. Now, with regards to the growth rates, they're not uniform. McKinsey, from what we see, what I know of, is growing at about 5 to 7% growth rate over here. BCG and Bain, they've been growing at that double-digit growth rates. I think from a growth standpoint, both BCG and Bain are plus over here. But all three of these firms are big firms. McKinsey is known. I mean, if you look at Ports and Quants, they're rated number one. But just in terms of growth rates over here. So how many consultants do they hire? Last year, McKinsey hired 1,500 consultants. Now, not all of them are MBAs. About 1/3 of all consultants that these firms hire are MBAs. So arguably about 500 MBAs or so. Bain had about 700 consultants. Again, I'm saying about 1/3 MBA. So you're talking about that 230 to 40-ish number. I couldn't find a number for BCG, but if you were to really just do a linear interpolation, say about 1,000 to 1,100 overall consultants, and again about 1/3 of them MBAs. So a fairly significant number of MBAs. If you consider that majority of these MBAs that are hired, they're from the top 25 schools. That's a huge number of MBAs over here. So to summarize, if you're looking at consulting as a career, if that's the reason why you're going into the B school, really great news for you. If you want to explore consulting, it seems there are plenty of opportunities out there. It seems to, it's always paid well, and it seems that it's going to pay well it's going to continue to pay well too. And so overall good news for not just for consulting, but for overall MBA hiring. I mean, because this just shows where the economy is going, and firms that hire consultants, not hire, firms that pay BCG, McKinsey, and Bain to get consultants to work for them on an hourly basis or a project basis, they also in turn hire MBAs. So I think overall, really good news for overall MBA hiring as well. Now, if you like this article, I'm just the guy who's in front of the camera. All the script, pretty much everything was done by Lekhika, so she's the one to credit. Like this video, if you like this article. And with that, thank you very much. And man, this suit is getting to be itchy. So yeah, I don't know how MBAs do it, but for those of you who want to be MBAs, good luck. It seems there are lots and lots of jobs in consulting, and you guys are in for an amazing ride. Happy learning.